Thank you so much, Guido, for being on. I feel like you're the first like celebrity that I've had on. Just because I'm such a huge fan of Catan. I am Settlers of Catan, of course. And one of my friends, Mikel Monleon, he's the one that introduced me to Catan. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like, what are the odds? Like,
Thank you so much, Gerard. I'm so
of
happy to be
course.
on. I've listened to so many of your podcasts, and it's been, I want to go back to when John Lee Brody started the Catan live stream.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, well, it's the perfect team, John, Rio, Shauna, and Kaylee. And then we had like sometimes Macaulay Culkin in there. And then I thought, that this is just perfect, can't get better. And then you showed up, and I was like, oh man, like that's even more fresh air. And like, it's awesome. What a good positive vibe. It's just like you guys, this was during the big early pandemic times. And I
Yeah.
think we all looked for that anchor. And for me, you guys were that anchor. Like every Friday afternoon, all right, it's the Catan live stream. And John Lee Brody, our common friend, is just so such a sweet guy. Like, and he's so entertaining,
Completely.
funny, kind.
Yeah,
And he did an amazing hosting. Yeah.
for sure. I'd like to think that's the common ingredient we all have as well.
Yeah, you really, yeah, no, and it's interesting because you guys are competitive, and especially, like everybody has their personality traits, but everybody wants to win, and you guys live the spirit of Catan in the sense that you collaborate, you're nice with each other, but there's also competition and like at times even intense competition. But
Very much
it's
so.
never you never go to a place where it gets ugly or and I was like, gosh, you guys like you live the spirit of Catan. That's so awesome.
I love that. That's because we don't play City of Nights on the live stream.
Well, we have to, but hey, that's an experiment. Let's see how that goes.
OMG. I love that you bring that up because I've always loved Catan in the sense that, like, of course, it's a competitive game, but it really brings people together as well. Before Catan, one of my favorite games was Monopoly. And
Mhm.
Monopoly doesn't have that same camaraderie. A lot of times it's very cutthroat, and sometimes you make some enemies as well. So Catan replaced that, and I was like, oh, and this feels like we can actually all end and still be friends and have a good time, and it'd be like the center of, for me it's always been the center of a really fun like night with friends or family. And so like I appreciate you for bringing that to the world, or your dad at least.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And you make a good point. It's like the question is like, what kind of experience do you want to have? And I think some games are winner takes it all, right? And so a zero sum game, and that can of course be just really a great experience. But with Catan, it's sort of this win-win. Everybody has always a stake at it, and it's just like
Yeah,
even if you're trailing in the game, I think in most cases, like you have a sense of being still involved and having
for
a
sure.
say, right? And having a place at the table. And I feel sometimes with other games where it's very competitive, what the problem might be sometimes is that you you feel like it doesn't really matter what you do. You don't really have a say in the game, and then so then you could sort of trail off, and it's just like nice and empowering to know that you can still affect the game even if you're
Yeah,
last in place.
yeah,
And
so true.
yeah,
Especially because it's so it's all about the roles really, and there's no control over that a lot of time, even though it feels like that on Catan Universe.
oh
We've
yeah,
joked
as we
about
know
that.
from our games.
um and I'd love to hear, what was that like for you to have John reach out to you last year? So for anybody who hasn't listened to the John Lee Brody, for sure you have to, it's first season.
Mhm.
But he's a mutual friend of ours because he reached out to Catan, and at the beginning of the pandemic, we started, or they started, and I was kind of an add-in during the season, but started playing Catan regularly every Friday, live streaming it. How was that for you to get that email or phone call, and what was your first thoughts? And seems like you were very willing to jump in and be a part of it, and so thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question. So initially, or we started with Catan very small, like it was just conventions we went to. And just I want to go back a little bit in time and sort of set the table for the context. And so for us, it was always being at the conventions, at game fairs, and just bring the game to people, sometimes at malls or something, like just like have a table and put it and show it to people. That's how
Oh,
Catan
wow.
and how we market Catan. This has still like been the pillar of our branding and marketing strategy. And then, all of a sudden come March, actually it's almost, yeah, it's been almost like a year now, right? Like,
Crazy
so
now.
so once the pandemic hit, we were at a complete loss. We had just booked various like conventions, and
Oh,
just like this was
wow.
like the core strategy of our marketing, just bring the game to the Catan games to people and play it with them. And we had to cancel everything and just thought, well, what, right? So
How do you get it to the people now?
how do you get it to the people? And so like sometimes you just, yeah, it's just great timing. So John's inquiry came just at a perfect time where he said, hey, I can actually do these live streams, and we just have the physical board and just invite people, like they check in from their homes, and we play. Everybody has a reference board in front of them, and so
Yeah.
like that beautiful bridge, analog, digital. And that's when he proposed that to us, we said like, well, that's perfect, what else are we going to do? And so
For sure.
that was really great, and that's how it all came about. And then it was really interesting to see the evolution of his show. At first it was really just a room and the board, and then each time John
Yes.
added to it, and then he had a couch, and then he had a shelf with
Mm,
like stuff in the back, and then various guests. And what is also, we this was a tumultuous year, and it was always an amazing opportunity to also check in. Hey, what's going on? How's everybody doing? And what is going on in society right now? There's obviously a lot of pain and a lot of turmoil, and let's talk about that. And so it was great, not only to, because the gaming can be an escape, right? To escape from reality, and just like immerse yourself with friends, family,
yeah.
into, and actually with strangers, and they become friends immediately.
True.
You connect with
John
them.
and I made friends over our first game was Catan, and that's how we
Yeah,
first met. So it's true.
yeah, yeah. It's so that's been an amazing experience to just try that out, and then it became very natural. And I have to thank also Callie, who is at Catan Studio, and she embraced
Yes.
that right away, and so that was great. Yeah,
She's been really dope.
yeah.
And I still have our Christmas card up on the refrigerator.
That's awesome.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about you and kind of what it was like, obviously growing up with Catan and the household, but just a
Mhm.
little bit about your story as well.
Yeah, so I'm from Germany originally, and I came over to the States in
That's not a
'97.
Southern accent then.
No. As kids, we grew up, and my dad, like, for him, game design was an escape. Like, he took over his dad's business, and that business wasn't doing very well, so he tried really hard to do his business, take care of his family. And then kind of like the stress of his everyday job, he really wanted to have something that like he can escape into, a creative pursuit. I think this is
Yeah.
for all of us, like it's an island of sanity if we have music, art, whatever, right? Like that's sort of, for him it was designing games. And on the weekends he would show us the games and we would play them. And then sometimes if we looked at the watch, or comics or something, he knew, okay, that's
That's
not
not
really happening. They're not really immersed in it. So and then he took it to his basement and then tinkered some more, and then came next
Yeah.
Sunday, and that became a tradition as a family. And so for a really long time it was just a hobby, something that we did as a family. And then my dad, like, he became part of the convention scene in Germany, and like just made connections with the publishers. published a few games. They also made like Game of the Year in Germany, and that was kind of like a prestigious award, but it was always like just purely a hobby and something to
Wow.
enjoy and
Yeah.
to not more than that. And I think in a weird sense, you know, since your show is often also like from turning coal into diamonds, which I love that premise, by the way, because it's very
Thank you.
focused and like you have like a wide audience. You can everybody has that moment, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't think about, I think, you know, how can I make this commercially viable or something. It just was something that helped him cope with his job. And I think all of us
Mm,
to some degree need something to cope with, you know, just problems, just to go on that island of
yeah.
sanity.
Of
Anyway,
course.
so though it all built like he in 95 he came out with Catan, and that was a game changer in Germany immediately. He had massive success with it, and it was just, you know, sometimes there's the timing right, like John Lee Brody coming with a Catan live stream
Yeah.
at the right time. So at that point, people were really, newspapers, magazines, they would write about games just the same way they would review films or books, music, and there was an audience for it, and also
Mm.
we created the rules in a way that were very accessible, and so it was very successful. Very different story in the US, where it took years for
Oh,
the game to
really?
grow. Yeah.
What was that like for you guys seeing that evolution of like dad's just tinkering in the basement? We have our tradition of playing games, and then
Yeah.
wow, all of a sudden one of dad's games is like
Yeah,
going
it was,
wild.
you know, even when Catan was massively successful in Germany in 95, we were all taken aback because we thought, we really always believed in his games, and we knew that that was his medium. Like he was really creative. He had tried everything else, music, writing, art, and he figured that like all of these components, he enjoyed them, but he felt that they really came to a fore with game design, and that was like his creative niche, like where he really excelled. And so we always trusted that, and were convinced that he was good, but to see the commercial success, we were like, oh wow, okay, that's pretty amazing, you know, that it
Yeah.
has like such a mainstream appeal. And you know, I'm super proud of him because he has sort of just done this like as an art form that
Yeah.
then stumbled into success with it.
I love that. How hands on is he still today with Catan and the next generation of games? Are there future versions coming out maybe?
Yeah, so we're always like working on new ideas, and so he now my brother Benny and I take care of the business aspect of the family business, and so that allows our dad to pursue the creative aspects of it. So he still thinks about new game designs, and he's also really found a liking to writing. So he wrote his memoir. It's only available in German
Yes.
now, but so he's, yeah, he now can really pursue his creative dreams, and we help with the business. And actually my brother is also a designer and game designer, and so he toggles back and forth between the business aspects and then also the creative aspects.
I love that. And so how did that journey take you to the States? Because you came around like 95 or 97 or so, right? A couple years
I
after.
came, yeah, 97, yeah, that's right. So
I
I
read the two
always
posts you did on Catan.
thank you for doing the research.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see, I grew up in this tiny little German village, and I always had this urge to travel and to get to know about new cultures, and so I really was chomping at the bit to get out. And I was always that time when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was already hitchhiking all over Europe. In those days, you could still do that. I just had a
Hitchhiking.
guitar, and like it's actually that guitar over here that
Oh, wow.
I was keeping that. I've just kind of had always this urge to travel and to roam, and there were times when I just had my guitar, and I would just be a busker and like make enough money and
Wow.
just, sometimes you make a lot of friends when you travel, especially sort of the European hitchhiking and train
Yeah.
scene. So I
A
made that,
different
and
time.
different time, and then I went to, so in Germany we had to do social service or military. So a lot of guys did social service. So you work in a nursing home, hospital, so on. So I did that, and then after that, I went to Mexico and the United States, travel, also backpacking, where I met my now wife, and so
Yay.
I stayed. And actually, then in '97, I came. We had a long distance relationship for 2 years, and then in '97 I came over to the States, and so I brought the game. So it was sort of a hobby where I said, hey, with my dad, like, let's try, see, we'll publish it here, see what happens. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like a very small print run, 5,000. So I figured, like, I just did that while I went to school. I went to New Orleans, to UNO, and my wife and I lived down there. And then I just did it as a hobby, just to, and to, as a, also like an excuse to stay in touch with my family, while I
Yeah.
studied here in the States. And
An
then just,
excuse.
yeah, it was like, I had really, like, I fell in love with the United States, right away.
Mm.
It's a, it, and I was just wowed by, coming from this small village, and I was just wowed by just like the culture, the humor, and it's very dynamic. There's a lot of good, bad, and just in every society. But I was attracted by the dynamics, by the sort of the idea of it seems to be constantly evolving.
Mm.
And so, but I took the game, and so the game was the connector to my family, to Germany. And
Yeah.
I just basically, I always see it as it was my passport. It's like I just had the game,
Wow.
played it with
Yeah, that's so
people,
cool.
and you make friends right away. And it took a long time to get to where it was a hobby here, to where it actually then sort of I stumbled into making this as a business, here in the United States too.
Do you have an idea, or what would be your guess on what took it a little bit longer in the States than in Germany?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Gerard. In Germany there was kind of like, um, I always think about, I love this book by Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote The
Mm.
Tipping Point. Have you read it by any
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
chance?
I actually
Yeah,
have.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
been a
it
while
down
actually.
there somewhere.
Oh, great. I love his writing, and the tipping point was kind of, I think about Catan, where in Germany you had like a lot of factors and confluences that met at a certain point. Like you had a culture of people who were really into playing games in Germany. You had like writers in magazines, and so like just the right game had to come along that spoke to the audience. And then so like it was all of a sudden there was fertile grounds there. In the United States, on contrary, there wasn't really an infrastructure. There were your regular board games, but I always felt, maybe I'm wrong, but like there was always like, there were certain occasions when you would break out a game. It was like for Thanksgiving, or like just like when you were reined in and there wasn't really anything else you could do. Or it would be something you do with your
Sounds
kids, but not
American.
like necessarily, yeah, adults. So um yeah, so it took, so what we had to do is we had to go to these board game conventions, and just in this very niche kind of way to start marketing the game. And that took a long time. And first it was the gamers, who were traditionally into it, but and then the college crowd. For some reason, like we really,
Mm.
it resonated with college kids, and some brought it back from their backpacking trips in Europe, and they brought it back to the US. And then it got into the tech scene, so like a lot of techies really liked it,
Oh, wow.
teachers, and then that's how it grew. And it wasn't until, I would say, 2009, there was a Wired article in the Wired magazine about this game,
Yeah.
Catan, and then that kind of put us on the map. And that's also where we learned, oh, okay, so we're apparently like people in tech sector or like creatives really like playing this, and it's kind of like a thing.
I love that. And so I've asked you this. Very fortunate, and thank you for we get to play. We have like weekly games of Catan now.
Yeah, it's so
And
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, and so I got to ask you this, but I think it's a really great question for other people to hear. Where has been your favorite place that you've played Catan? And maybe where would you like to play Catan that you haven't played yet?
Okay, you asked me this, so thanks. I was a little prepared. I think the answer that I gave when you asked me first time was like, I have seen so many people playing Catan in places I would really love to play it. And I there were people in who took the game to their world travels, and you see them on Machu Picchu, or like on an ocean liner, or like in a jungle, different places, or in the desert, really cool places. And then I would say my favorite places, there's when I used to go to Germany, now I can't because of the pandemic, but
Yeah.
my family and I get together, and there is this we have this, we go to this, we rent a place, and then it's really nice, bucolic, beautiful nature, and then we sort of have a sit down and catch up, after not having seen each other for a while, and then play. And it's just kind of a nice, rolling hills, kind of nice area, and that's like
Yeah.
nothing super special, but like that's my favorite place to play in. But I have to say, like, I have seen people taking the game to places that are stunning, and they kind of made at the beach, and like, so yeah, there are people who have really brought the game to great places.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming, which we've also joked about, that you're probably not in an office a lot. So
No.
what are some other things that maybe you haven't gotten a chance to do that you would normally be doing? It seems like you have a lot of like things back there. I see a
Yeah, this is sort of
surfboard,
my,
longboard. It looks like you're very active.
yeah, I like to, so this is definitely, I've always like to be, also like to, yeah, just to have different hobbies and a tinker. And I get sort of like with the surfing or longboarding or the bike, I'm it's totally fine for me to get to a point where it's just good enough. It's like the equivalent of a Skype call. It's just good enough. Like,
Wow,
I
the shade. I love it.
the other day I called my mom, and my parents still have a landline, right? And I called her. I was like, because we're also hopping on Zoom calls, so it hasn't been a while since I've actually talked to somebody on a landline. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that is amazing quality, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so it's like, okay, so this is what I do, is like just good enough. It's like a Skype call, and like, but it's not the
Mm-hmm.
landline, but it's fine. I like, it's sort of, for escapism, it's great, always a new experiencing. And so like,
True.
so this stuff, luckily where I live in Oakland, I can still, we have nice hills and stuff, and skate parks, and water is not too far away, so that's great to do. What I really miss is traveling and go see music, comedy. It's so great. I
Mm.
Now, when the pandemic is over, I want to see your stand-up comedian, right? So
Yeah, of
I want to see you in
course.
show for sure. Yeah, last time was like Roy Wood Jr., Michelle Wolf, and
I
a bunch
love
of other
Michelle
people.
Wolf.
Yeah,
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 she's
she was great.
hilarious.
She was the first comedian. We've had, like, this is, I really miss seeing comedy, and I'm super excited to see you live when that's possible.
Yeah.
But she was the first one. She came in March to San Francisco, and she was the first one to make jokes about Corona, but like everybody's
Yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh,
yeah.
this could be actually a real thing.
That's
And then,
wild.
yeah, so that, I miss that. And then just going out, and I love food, and just like company. So usually like smaller settings, like music, comedy, and food. I like sort of small settings, which makes it a little bit more, I don't know, special. Like, just like a comedy club where maybe you have like 20, 30 people or something. I sometimes enjoy that more than the big ones,
Yeah,
or small
totally.
clubs to see music or something. So that those are the things I really miss.
I That's one thing I've really gotten to see about you is that well, I think in those smaller settings, you can get to enjoy the people that you're with a lot more and then kind of just be more engaged. And I've
Mhm.
really seen that you care a lot about the relationships around you. Everybody that I've seen that's interacted with you has had always amazing things to say about you. So that's
Oh,
really
thank you.
cool. Yeah. What has that like? What's that been like for you in playing Catan? Because sometimes it is such a competitive game. What's your mentality going into games, especially like a City and Night game, or because like even having the robber placed on you. How do you deal with some of those things?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like we just had like a game, right? And it was so funny. At first it was very chatty, and then like at some point it got very quiet, not hostile, but tense.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was just the right way. And I actually
A
like that
lot
it
less
would,
conversational.
that's conversational. Yeah, yeah. But you almost get in sort of a flow mentality, or like you're sort of so immersed in it. And that's what I really like when it gets to that point where it's not hostile, but like where like you're really hyper focused on it. But then I also actually like the most exciting is like I really enjoy these weekly games that we have, because it's also an opportunity to check in at first, what TV shows are you guys watching? What are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? And then all of a sudden, like you're in the game, and you're very competitive. And so I would say I really like, I find myself like those are the best games, where you get sort of like to touch base with people, but then also like you all of a sudden you get into the game, and that's sort of the thing, and that's the
Yeah.
magic of the game, right? And that's also when the game is good, where everybody's just like drawn in and immersed.
Hmm. And yeah, I love that. And so, what do you guys think about when you're making new versions of the game? I think reason I asked that is because playing the different versions like Seafarers, City and Nights, and then the most recent one that I at least know is Starfarers, and it's
Mhm.
so fun and so different as well.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about when making new games and new versions? What inspires you guys?
Yeah, so I guess I could go back a little bit. Maybe also ties into, where my dad, like where does he get his ideas from? And perhaps what's, I think, always interesting is like his game design perspective is coming from a story. So he would envision like what would it be like if you have a group of people who need to flee or move away from their homelands because of
Mm,
various reasons, being just like limited food supply, hostile situations, and so on. And what if they then landed on an island that was bountiful, but they would sort of have found paradise and could establish utopia, but then they're also bringing their old problems with them. And sort of the framework for this is that you have a new environment. It could be paradise, it could be full utopia, but then like how would that be in a game? And then how you have always there's always conflict, that's
mm,
unavoidable, right? You bring your old problems with you, but what if conflict is resolved in a non-violent way? And so like what if you had to compete but also to cooperate, and like the bottom line is always like you gain always more from collaboration than from
mm.
conflict or resolving, or like it's always in your interest at the end of the day to resolve conflict non-violently. And so this is sort of like where my dad comes from, the idea. And then sort of he's like, how could you experience this as a game? And that's kind of like his approach. And there are other totally different avenues to game design. Others is like you have sort of a concept, and then you put like a theme onto it. But for him, it's always like he has a story first, and then he turns that into a game.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Do you have any favorite games that are not Catan? Are you allowed to
So
play any other
I
games?
the,
I'm sure. I'm sure.
yeah, no, the thing is I'm such a one trick pony, because of Catan. I'm actually otherwise a casual gamer, I would say, like where I enjoy like a variety of games. and I have like a diverse portfolio of hobbies, like all of these things. But when it comes to games, I really like the casual ones. Like I'm thinking Exploding Kittens or Throw Throw Burrito. Did you know
I love
those
that. I
games?
love Exploding Kittens. Yeah,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
little nephew
You know,
got me into that.
do you know Throw Throw Burrito?
No, I don't know that one
Okay,
yet.
that's a really funny one. That's that kind of our family, when we're all depressed, like with the pandemic, and like we got that game out. And it's basically like it's a card game, and you have like these foam burritos, and like the card game at some point triggers these duels where you have like to throw these foam burritos at each other. And it's
That's
very
hilarious.
silly, but
Yeah.
it just like at some point we were just the family, just it got my teenage sons even like to laugh, and they were, because they were just so disoriented with like
Yeah.
once the pandemic started and stuff. So that those types of games that are really quick and casual and fun. And otherwise I really yeah, we do still some testing, and recently it's been great to meet with you guys and to play Catan. But I would say my go-to is Cities and Nights,
Ooh,
because it is just so immersive and competitive, and the night
very much so.
and that one I really like playing on Catan Universe, because it does, there's so much to manage, so many pieces, and that's really nice. And especially what has been great, I think, when we meet on Clubhouse, and then we have the game on. I think we all have iPads, right? Or
I use
play it
my
on
laptop. I'm on
your laptop. Okay,
Mac, but I don't use
okay,
a laptop, or I don't use an iPad.
okay, yeah. But that's kind of like a nice combination too. And then, as you said, like because there are so many pieces, it's very convenient, and you can at least the base game it's under an hour, and then Cities and Nights takes a little longer. But
Hmm.
yeah,
I would love for us to play that on the stream
I'm
this
year.
year.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
That
the
would be
live stream,
so
right? With
cool.
the
Yeah,
Johnny
the
Pro.
live
Yeah, yeah,
stream. I
yeah,
mean, we
yeah,
can do.
yeah.
Is there anything I haven't asked that you'd like to share?
Well, I guess the cold to turning cold to diamonds, the moment. Since I think you have that in your show, I think uh, I first of all, let me say that I love listening to your podcast, because you really have, it's just this one prism, like the focal point of just like turning coal into diamonds. And for some reason it really resonated with me, because it's like something that applies to everybody, right, from all walks of lives and backgrounds. And then I also really like how you have a super diverse like guests like on your podcast. And it's been like that's been a good substitute for, like, I've been listening to so many more podcasts, because you
Mm.
just can't go to see music or comedy, or go out, meet with friends for for food and dinner and stuff. So I think it's like your podcast has been really great, because it's been a sort of a passport to get to know other perspectives. And that's but it's everybody at the same time. It resonates with everybody. Like how did you turn your colon and into a diamond? And like I think for me personally was with Catan, making that decision to be a steward for my dad's game, and just to make that decision to work with him, because I told him before I would not want to work with him in a family business when he did like his when he took over his father's business, which was, he was a dental technician.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would never have asked me like, well, do you want to work with me in Catan? Because I made very clear that I didn't want to
Yeah.
work on a previous business with him. And so that was something where making that decision and then just like sticking with it and building it. Yeah.
What brought you to that decision?
So I just thought that, so I wanted to, I studied international relations, and I always, my love for traveling and cultures, and I wanted to become a diplomat or work in international relations in some capacity. But it was really, I didn't know how to get into it. And it was, I lived in DC, in Washington, DC, and I tried to break into that, but it's a very specific kind of way to get into that field. And then I looked at Catan and what my dad created, and I was like, oh, I could do that. I could work internationally. We have, people play it, and it's now played in over 40 languages. It's published in over 40 languages, and like it's just the greatest joy is like to go to these world championships, Catan world championships, and see people, different cultures playing together. And so figured like that's what I want to do. But I then asked my dad, it's like, I know that I didn't want to work for your previous business, but what you're doing here, amazing.
Yeah.
Give me a chance to and then he's like, I need somebody. I just want to work creatively. I want somebody to do the business. So let's do it. And so we both had to jump over our shadows. He wouldn't have asked me because I had told him before, well, I didn't want to work for your other business,
Yeah.
And so sometimes, I guess what it comes down to sometimes is you have to just ask and not feel
So true.
the pride or something, like not to ask and to keep it bottled up or something. So that's an important, that was an important lesson for me.
Yeah. I love that. It's just, you never know, or the answer's always no if you don't ask, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so with that being said, I know you've gotten to work internationally. I know you speak a few different languages. How has that been for you getting to practice that in different, how many of the 40 languages that Catan's in can you actually play Catan in?
There's sort of the you know a few words and for sheep and this or another language. And I know we practice our Spanish with Rio, I guess, in the other game, which was fun. But yeah, it's unfortunately for I can literally only like German and English for just to support, to carry on a conversation. I can understand French and Spanish, but
I was gonna say you have a good amount of Spanish at least.
a little bit. I
Learn.
could probably on a very rudimentary level get by, but it's just like nothing for like more substantial.
These
But it was
humble
fun
guys.
to chat with you guys. Yeah.
And how often do you get to use your German still?
So a lot. It's almost, that's the other strange thing is like now that the whole world is, or part of the world is in lockdown. It's almost like I've gotten more. I live mentally in Germany through media. I also listen to podcasts, watch the news, watch shows. My brother and I are super tight. He lives in Frankfurt, Germany, and we talk every day, at least like on Zoom for like an hour, and then we exchange WhatsApp audio messages, and
Oh,
we're,
that's
we're
so cute.
yeah, so we're constantly and he's 10 years younger than I, but we're just like super connected, and that's also great to have in your family to have like such a close relationship, and that's my bridge also to Germany, also to popular culture, like what's going on. And so like when I go back, I'm not completely rusty, because it's weird how that can happen if you lived in another country and then you go back.
Yeah,
And
I've heard that.
yeah.
And so I think one of my last few questions, and please feel free to share anything
Sure.
if I haven't asked and you feel like sharing something. What's your vision for Catan moving forward? What would you like to bring to it? What would you like to see happen in the next few years?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. That's a really good question too. So the most important thing is to keep building the community, and that's been something that we've always done, and then just to weave that and make it stronger, make the game also. So what we've seen is also that we used to be just confined to, I would say, a lot of our of Catan players in the United States were, I would say, white, middle-aged. It was just the convention scene and male. And now we're seeing that like it's really has become like has gotten a much bigger audience and playership. So which is great to see that like it's also just becoming, the game has a more diverse audience, which is great. So continued community building, and then there are different platforms, digital storytelling. There is a story within Catan, but then also stories between the players. And so we're always looking at what is the story of Catan and how can we do that. So in a way, like John Lee Brody's Catan live stream is also a way of storytelling, because you guys get together and you experience something together, and it is sort of like
Yeah,
it's almost like a TV show in a way.
for sure.
And so
We
that's
have our, I'm
sorry.
sorry. I was gonna say we have our inside jokes with like the
Yeah.
music when we play the 11s and stuff like that, things like that that people can follow along and see how even just the evolution of it, like you said, from seeing how it started with the one board. It's kind of like the first season into the second season, things
Yeah.
like evolving, which is really cool.
Exactly. And then that's those are the kind of and we will have like new games and stuff, but the biggest focus is on what we have to maintain it and to make it even better. And sometimes it's like just little tweaks that we'll do, but yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Any fun strategies like that you think about when you're playing and that you can give us?
Well, I guess there are the technical strategies, right? Like, so some people will say like, well, build cities early, and then you get more resources that way, and that's always a good one. But then there are the social strategies, and I think I might have applied one that only worked. That was
Social
when we had the game.
strategies.
That's
I
like,
love
I mean,
that.
there's the complainer. It's like, oh, you always put the robber on me.
Ooh.
That's like.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the person who is always like in second and like just like super close to the first one. It's like, oh, that player, you gotta watch out. And then they have like a perfect way to point out like the people in the lead, and then everybody sort of believes that they can sell. It's like, oh yeah, we really have to put that rubber always on that person, and like we cannot trade with that person. And then next thing you know, that poor person is like, in fourth place, and
Yeah, yeah.
very Machiavellian, I guess. So that's another one. There's the one that works only one time. I guess when I told you that, like, yeah, like Teubers never win because like everything's so valuable. But you
Yes.
guys, you guys were so kind and so careful playing with me, and I get that one time where I win.
Yeah. You won't fool
So
us
I think
again.
then there's just people who can just like trade really well. You have people who max it out and they ask for the 10th
Two
time.
for
Well,
ones or
can you do this? And then so it's just kind of like be like a good like trade, but like don't take too far. So, and I think that's trading is very powerful in this
it
game.
is. It is.
Yeah.
That's so funny. The different I've what's funny is I'm laughing because I've played all of those social strategies. And sometimes not even with sometimes without even knowing, I've definitely been the it's always me, guys, or I haven't gotten something in a long time, or gotta watch out for Rio, guys. He's
Yeah, yeah,
close
yeah,
to
yeah.
winning.
By the way, it's super awesome. Like you and Rio, your very amicable competitorship is going to it's
Yeah,
very entertaining. You
I
guys are
love
great.
it. Thank
Yeah.
you. And so, a question that we ask every guest. Well, before I ask, do you
Mhm.
anything else again that you would like to share that I haven't asked?
Uh,
Maybe.
no, great questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you. But we ask everybody. We've all heard the quote: "Be the change you wish to see." What's the
Mhm.
change you wish to see, and how are you going to be it?
Yeah, I love that question. Like, and it's always sometimes I go and scrub forward to listen to that. Like what your
Oh,
guests were saying.
good to know that actually. It's been something that I've been thinking about on Instagram. I
Ah.
I want to put on Instagram each guest answer to that because I think
Oh,
that's
I love
really
that.
cool. That would be really cool to have something that's pretty consistent but will change each time and then get each guest perspective of that question.
You've really like by the way, I love the new design. That's kind of like the live
Thank you.
stream, like where it evolves, like your podcast has evolved. And
Thank you.
but to your question, so I feel you sort of like you're driving and there's like somebody is engaging in road rage, and you're like, why does that person have to be such a prick? Like, why? But then you realize, oh, okay, so I'm triggered by it. This should actually totally just roll off, and like I should be cool. And then that's sort of a sign. Okay, so in order to be the kindest and best version, and the most empathetic and sympathetic version, and compassionate person that you can be to your fellow human beings, citizens, is to really work on yourself and make sure like your needs are taken care of, your mental health, you get enough exercise, your emotional well-being, that you're taking care of it. And then actually, you never come out of a yoga session and engage immediately in road rage, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen. So, or you meditate and then you're just like snap at somebody right after you get out of. So I think making sure that you take care of it, and know what you need. Like if you're an introvert, make sure you get that alone time where you can recharge your batteries. If you're an extrovert, make sure, and I feel for extroverts right now, it's really hard. Make sure though that you can socialize and get energy that way. What your needs are. So social, mental, emotional, physical, like spiritual, all of these needs, get them met. And then I think actually that propels you to be the best you can be. And I don't feel particularly original, because I've seen or heard in one way or another, a lot of your guests have sort of said a similar thing. It always is the idea, what is the change that you can see? And it starts with yourself, and like get yourself in a good place where you really can be the best to others. And then as a result, that will also boost your well-being and like your happiness.
Well, it's a ripple effect. And
Yeah.
I think something that you didn't say exactly, but like what I got out of it, it's like knowing where to like refill your energy, knowing
Mm-hmm.
if you're an introvert to have that self-care and alone time, if you're an extrovert, figuring out where to get that energy and connection from. For me, it was a podcast.
Yeah,
A lot
yeah,
of my
absolutely.
friends joked with me at the beginning about, because all of this started during quarantine, and a lot of my friends joked with me, was like, oh, that's just your way of talking to people and all that stuff. And at a certain point it kind of was, but at the same time it was also me creatively finding that way to still be on stage, or still interact with people, but safely, because I didn't really like Zoom shows at first, or like Zoom
Mm-hmm.
comedy shows, or all of that. Everything's kind of transitioned because now we're used to it. We've been in a year of, of it. But thank you for sharing all of that, Guido. That was amazing. And thank you for being on. It's been a pleasure. I'm so honored that you, one, listened to my podcast, yet being on my podcast and being a really good friend now, it seems. And so
Yeah.
thank you for that. I really
No,
appreciate it.
I appreciate that, Gerard, and I appreciate our friendship. And I think also on a professional level, it feels, I really mean it. I've always gotten, since you said like I like small settings, right? So I felt like the greatest thing is like to watch a comedian or a musician, or like a chef in a small restaurant or something, and they're just at the beginning of their game, and they're evolving, but there's like really great potential. And I feel that way with you and your podcast. I think you have a very you're driven by curiosity, it seems, and you have a very great way to relate to people. So it's an honor to be on your podcast, and it was just delightful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Guido.